What's going on, guys? This is BunnyMuffins. I have the patch 12.2 meta snapshot for teamfight tactics. This is the Gifts of the Golden Lantern patch, and I'm going to be doing something a tiny bit different this week. So I know a lot of people who watch these videos, they're at all sorts of different levels. So as we go through this summary of like what's in the tier list, I'm going to let you guys know like which comps are really good from a couple different perspectives. Some comps are really good if you're like below diamond. Some comps are really good if you're trying to go from like diamond to masters. And then some comps are really only played at like the highest level, such as like top 100 or top 50 even. So we're going to be going over all of that as we go through this list. So first things first, Chemtech Urgot. This is a comp that is working well at all sorts of different levels. This is according to the data, according to what people play, and according to like what my gut feelings are. Urgot got a little bit of a buff, so it's no surprise that he is going to be back into the S tier. After that, we have Yone. Yone's a little bit different. I can't say the same about Yone. I only see him doing well at the very highest levels. Everywhere else, he is not doing so hot. So maybe he drops down to the A tier later on, but like a lot of super high level people are playing a lot of challengers and a lot of Yone. So I can't really push him down to the A tier because of that. But again, everywhere else I've seen him kind of do kind of badly. So onto the A tier, we have Imperial. There is a new Imperial build, which revolves around Reroll Swain. We'll get into that later, but pretty much every single type of carry for Imperial's work right now, whether it be Samira, Swain, or Talon. We'll get into all those variations after we go through the summary. Of course, I always explain how to play every single comp. But yeah, there's a new Reroll Swain build. This comp is really good if you want to do like a fast climb, because that's what a lot of people are using it for right now, because it is relatively unknown until like the past couple of days. With that in mind, like maybe it gets more popular, in which case the comp gets worse. So you do have to keep that in mind. That's why I did not put it in the S tier, because I have a feeling once it picks up in popularity, not going to be as strong, but it'll still probably be pretty good. Next up, we have Syndicate. Syndicate's kind of well-rounded at all ranks. So I'd say this is probably like a very fair assessment of Syndicate. Innovator, I feel like at like the very highest level, not played as much. Everywhere else, it's doing pretty fine. Arcanist, kind of like low A tier everywhere, in my opinion. Maybe like at the highest level, it's like high B tier, but obviously very playable if you get the right augments and right starts for it. Snipers, this one is weird. This one does really well at the very highest level, but kind of sucks everywhere else. It's similar to Yone in that sense, where like a lot of high level players are playing Jhin builds, but everywhere else, like it's kind of not doing that well. So keep that in mind whenever you're playing these two compositions. So now onto the B tier. Socialites, they got put into the dumpster kind of, because of all the nerfs to the legendary units. Katarina Assassins, I would stay away from this personally. Not too many people are doing it. And the data also is saying that they kind of suck even after the buffs. I'm guessing that maybe all the Syndicate players are taking all your assassins, so it makes the Katarina build a little bit harder. Protector reroll, you can play this at any level. It just depends on whether you get the correct augments or not. And then Tristana reroll, not too many people are playing this anymore. Mutant Malzahar, this one, it depends on your items and the mutant buff and like how quickly you are able to get all the mutants for your team to level 2. For example, like Malzahar and Cho'Gath, 1 versus 2 is a big difference, and then 2 versus 3 is also a big difference, especially on Cho'Gath. And then Scrap, there are some Scrap reroll builds, such as like the Trundle reroll, that's good. There's like the 6 Scrap, which is decent. It really depends on the game and your augments that you're getting. But that is pretty much it for the S, A, and B tier. I'm going to skip the C tier this week. I have a feeling like maybe there is a hidden Misfortune reroll build. I'm sure it's not bad if you get the right augments for it, but I don't think you can be playing it in that many games already. But let's get into how to play every single comp. I'm going to try to keep this video short because we're kind of at the tail end of the set. In case you guys missed it, they put out a bunch of set 6.5 spoilers, which I covered in my most recent video, so I'll try to leave a card up here for those who are interested or haven't seen it yet. So Urgot, this one is really interesting because it works at 3 and 5 Chemtech at like pretty equal consistencies. Like before it was only the 3 Chemtech version, but now I see a lot more people playing 5 Chemtech in their endgame boards instead of only their mid-game boards. But the principle remains the same. You just get Urgot items. He uses almost any AD item. I say the most important one is Runons, and then you kind of just slam all the other items. Jinx is a very viable carry right now, so if you get to the late game, she is a nice to have right now because she did get a couple of buffs. Next up we have Yone. I've seen that 4 Challenger at the highest level is the most popular version right now. Normally people go for like 6 or 8. I'm not saying it's bad, but the version I've seen the most is the 4 Challenger version. Sometimes they don't even go for 4 Academy. If you do not get the Academy Spatula on Fiora, you go only 2 Academy, and then you go 4 Challenger, 2 Academy, plus all strong units. So you'd play like a bunch of Legendary units, you'd play a bunch of tanks, things of that nature. My favorite items on Yone are the Runons and QSS. I feel like this gives him the most uptime on his attacks, and then Last Whisper is pretty needed to shred through the tanks if necessary. So also your late game is going to be obviously rounded out by Kaisa, hopefully. Morello's is pretty good. It's just a little harder to get Kaisa now because they changed the leveling odds for Kaisa. Now onto the next tier, we have the A tier. We start off with the Imperial Reroll. First up, we have the Samira Reroll or Talon Reroll. These two builds are very similar. Essentially, you just want Assassin Spat Samira and then put some attack damage items on her, and then you reroll at level 7 for this build. The new build is the Swain build. This one revolves around ice creams on Lulu. And then Swain, he needs a Quicksilver. If not, he gets CC'd too much, and then he doesn't do his cast. And then Hat is the best item on him. If you could do Quicksilver double Hat, that is probably going to be one of the best builds. However, it's hard to get double Hat. So a Titans is good, a Giant Slayer is good, a Hand of Justice is good as a third item. Ionic Spark, really important on Vex. You could also put Ionic Spark on Swain if you don't get it on your Vex for some reason. But just the generic tank items on Vex will suffice. After that, you just want to play 4 Arcanists, 2 Enchanter, and 2 Scrap hopefully later on because Janna provides all those different stats. And then you run Yordles pretty much the whole game. You want to get 3-star Ziggs, Lulu, and Vex if possible. So obviously, if you're going for Swain, you want to reroll at level 6. If you're going for Samira, you slow roll at level 7. Yeah, it's just because they cost different amounts. So you change the levels where you slow roll based on that. Next up, we have the Syndicate build. Syndicate, you could either do reroll Shaco for Shaco 3-star, or you could go fast level up into Akali. Akali 1 or 2-star. Obviously, ideally, you'd rather have Akali 2-star. You could run the Socialite trait. You could also not run the Socialite trait and run 4 Assassins instead. Really depends on what your board's looking like, really depends on what champions you're hitting. Like, if you get a free Echo 2, of course, you're going to try to stay with 4 Assassins as much as possible. But if you hit a free Seraphine 2, like, maybe you go for the Socialite build. Overall, very solid build with a strong mid game because Shaco does a lot of work there, and then your late game is either Shaco 3 or the Akali 2. Next up, we have Ice Cream Innovator build. This build's still, like, decent. They did nerf it quite a bit. They nerfed Seraphine and the Ice Cream Cones. But I feel like Ice Cream Cone was probably just a good item before that people just never realized. So yeah, it's the same build from before. You don't have to go Innovators. You could go the Scholar build. You could go like the Enchanter build. Lots of different options there. Next up, we have Arcanist Lux. This build hasn't changed much either. You just go for 6 Arcanists, ideally 8 if you get some of the Arcanist augments or emblems. But you really just focus on perfect item Lux and then tank items on Vex, and pretty much go from there. It's a risky build because you're often running Yordles in the early game, so you end up losing a lot of life, but once you hit Lux 2, it is a big power spike, and you just try not to lose after that, because ideally she kind of kills everything. Sniper Jhin, lots of different builds for Jhin. You could, like, the reason why this build only works at the highest levels is because I've noticed there isn't like a set Jhin build. Jhin uses all sorts of different front lines, and I'm guessing people are having trouble navigating that, which is why only like the very best players are playing and having success with Jhin. Right now we have like kind of like the Bodyguard front line. That one is decent. A lot of people play it with the Scion front line as well. I've seen it a lot with the Bruiser front line also. So I think like having too many different options in the front line are making this build very confusing for a lot of players, which makes like the other conclusion kind of make like a little bit of sense because people just don't know what to do if you don't go for like a set build. So unless you're like really confident in your sniper ability, I would try to avoid it for now. It doesn't mean it's a bad comp if you don't know how to play it. It's just instead of like a A tier comp, it's probably like a B plus tier comp if you're not sure how to play it. Onto the B tier now, we have Socialite plus Random. This is the same nonsense as before. It's just much weaker. That's why not many people are playing it. So it is bumped down to the B tier. Maybe it could bump down to the C tier next week. Assassins, they buffed Katarina. She's still garbage. She's good in the mid game, don't get me wrong, but going for 3-star Cat is a little ambitious in my opinion. Next build, we have Protector Reroll. You just need good augments for it. Like any of the reroll augments that make your like rerolling stronger is gonna obviously be good. First Aid, this is probably like the best one for them, and then like depending on who your secondary carry is, like any of the like trait augments are pretty fantastic as well. So next build we have Yordle Tristana. I mean, you can only play this comp in so many games, so I'm just gonna leave it at that. If you get a ton of Tristanas, of course you can try to play it. If not, like, that doesn't happen that often, you know, so that's why most people don't go for that comp. Malzahar, this build is really dependent on what mutant trait you get. Last week I added in what to go for, or like how to change your playstyle based on what the mutant trait is. So you guys can go on over to the website bunnymuffins.lol if you want more in-depth detail about that. Scrap, this one's decent. Jinx got buffed a bit, so I feel like this build might actually go into like the A tier next week once people are more familiar with the build. I'm definitely going to try this out later on, but we'll see how that happens because you cannot choose what you go for in TFT a lot of times. At least it doesn't feel that way. We're going to skip the C tier this week. I'm just going to leave it at that because it is late in the set, so most people already know how to play most of the comps already. But hopefully, like, the beginning helped you guys a lot, so you guys can kind of pick and choose which comp to go for based on what level you're at. Let me know if I should keep doing that in the future or what. But I'm going to try to stream a little bit this week. I do have, like, a vacation in the next week. Not really a vacation. I'm just, like, visiting one of my friends for the weekend. Probably a couple videos now. Hopefully, I'll set stuff up for when I'm gone. But hopefully, you guys are already subscribed so you guys don't miss out on those videos. But yeah, I will see you all later.